Picture this. It's the early 1870s. The steel industry is booming, competition is fierce, and the stakes are incredibly high. Andrew Carnegie, already a rising star in the business world, has a bold vision. He wants to build the most advanced steel mill in the world. But this isn't just any mill. It's the Edgar Thomson Steelworks, named after his mentor. Carnegie is determined to make it a beacon of innovation and efficiency. But as with any grand vision, there are challenges. The construction of the mill is fraught with delays and escalating costs. Carnegie's advisors are getting anxious. They come to him with a suggestion. Andrew, why don't we cut some corners? We could save a lot of money and buy time by using older, more established technologies. Now imagine the pressure Carnegie must have felt. The financial burden was immense, and many were skeptical. But Carnegie stood firm. He insisted on using the latest technology at the time, the Bessemer process. This cutting-edge method promised greater efficiency and higher quality steel, but required a significant upfront investment. It was a gamble, and success was far from guaranteed. Fast forward a bit, and the Edgar Thomson Steelworks is finally completed. Carnegie's gamble pays off spectacularly. The mill becomes a marvel of efficiency and productivity. By producing higher quality steel at lower cost, Carnegie outcompetes his rivals and secures lucrative contracts, especially from the rapidly expanding railroad industry. So what's the lesson here? Andrew Carnegie's story at the Edgar Thomson Steelworks is a testament to visionary leadership and the courage to take calculated risks. He believed in the power of innovation and stuck to his principles, even when it seemed easier to take shortcuts. This decision didn't just secure his success, it set a new standard for the entire industry. Carnegie's commitment to excellence and his strategic risk-taking are why he's remembered as a giant in the industrial world. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best way forward is to invest in the future, even when the present seems uncertain. So as we dive deeper into Carnegie, keep this story in mind. It's a perfect example of how visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to innovation can change the course of history. Welcome back to Leaders, a podcast dedicated to exploring the best leaders this world has ever seen. And that first excerpt is a story about the subject of episode 34, another American titan, and that is Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie comes onto the scene in the late 1800s and does so in the form of being a pioneer in the steel industry. And he is sort of pegged as America's first modern titan. He becomes the richest man in the world upon his retirement. He did lead the expansion of the steel industry in the United States. And during the last 18 years of his life, he gave away around $350 million, which is roughly about $6.5 billion in today's dollars, almost 90% of his fortune to charities, foundations, and universities. So his lasting legacy, as we will get into further later, is around philanthropy. And so let's go into some of his leadership style here. And one way to look at it is really through the book of Andrew Carnegie. And so there's an autobiography as well as a book written by David Nasaw that I will reference here. But the other novel that seems to drive home a lot of what Andrew Carnegie's thoughts on leadership are is Think Your Way to Wealth. And that was a book author Napoleon Hill, who most famously book Think and Grow Rich was developed in the early 1900s. Hill collected and edited the notes from initial conversations with Carnegie and published them in 1948 as this book, Think Your Way to Wealth. At one point, Carnegie tells Hill that successful leaders in all walks of life exemplify a set of specific traits, with the best possessing all of them. And so, to summarize a lot of what he articulates there are about 31 different qualities that I think encapsulate how Carnegie views leadership and let's pull out maybe a few of them that stand out in terms of how Carnegie lived through his business career and had tremendous leadership. And so first, they have a definitive purpose and a definitive plan for attaining it. Great leaders are always working towards an overarching goal. Number 2, he says they have a motive that continuously drives them. Nothing great is ever achieved without a definitive motive, he says. Number 3, they surround themselves with talented people who share their vision. Carnegie certainly did this himself, and he refers to the ideal team as a mastermind alliance. Great achievement always is the result of coordination of minds working towards a definitive end, he says. Number 4, they are able to be self-reliant. There are certainly plenty of times when a leader needs to act on their own initiative, effort, and judgment. They have an intense self-discipline. You can't control others if you can't control yourself. There are no exceptions to the rule, Carnegie says. Number 6, they are persistent, so great leaders don't abandon plans at the first sign of opposition. Number 7, they are creative. Able leaders must be eternally seeking new and better ways of doing things. They must be on the lookout for new ideas and new opportunities to attain the object of their labors, he told Hill. So creative, adaptive, we've seen in other episodes as well as a common quality of these great leaders. 8, they are decisive. It's dangerous to be impulsive, but it is better to make an imperfect decision than none at all. 9, they collect all possible facts before making judgments. Able leaders take nothing for granted without a sound reason. They make it their business to get at the facts before forming judgments, but they move promptly and definitely. Number 10, they are enthusiastic. Being overly enthusiastic can be just as off-putting as someone who is too dry or cynical, but effective leaders know how to transmit their drive to their team, use that energy towards a goal. Number 11, they are fair. So playing favorites or treating an employee you don't like with disdain won't yield positive results for that long. Number 12, they have an open mind. The man with a closed mind does not inspire the confidence of his associates. Without confidence, great leadership is an impossibility. Number 13, they go beyond what is required of them. I have never known an able leader in business or industry who did not endeavor at all times to render more service than any man under his authority. They are tactful. Great leaders know how to be graceful, serving as an attractive public figurehead for their team. 15, they listen more than they speak. The best leaders don't use conversations as an excuse to feed their ego, but rather learn as much as possible from whoever they're speaking with. 16, they pay attention to detail. Successful leaders are aware of the responsibilities and output of all their subordinates, but in a way that doesn't lead to micromanaging. 17, they are determined. The best leaders bounce back from defeat, confident that they are now better equipped to achieve victory. 18, they can take criticism. The man who quote-unquote, flares up with resentment when his work is criticized will never become a successful leader. Carnegie says, bigness overlooks the smallness of criticism and carries on. 19, they know when to restrain themselves. Leaders can lose the respect of their people if they indulge in excesses too often. 20, they are loyal. Loyalty begins with loyalty to oneself, says Carnegie, referring to dedication to one's vision. Loyalty to your team and clients become an extension of this. 21, they know when to speak frankly. A diplomatic leader knows when to refrain from saying something that will be offensive or compromise their goals, but choosing to hide the truth through deceit is an easy way to develop a reputation for being untrustworthy. 22, they understand others' motivations. So great leaders have the ability to step outside themselves and imagine the perspectives of both subordinates and competition. 23, exceptionally likable. People will give their all for a leader they love. Sound leadership, Carnegie says, is based upon effective salesmanship, the ability to be sympathetic and to make oneself pleasing to others. 24, they are focused. The best leaders hone their attention and energy on a single project at a time. Concentrated effort gives one power that can be attained in no other way. They learn from mistakes. It's just as important to learn from your own mistakes as it is from others. 26, they assume responsibility for the mistakes of subordinates. Nothing destroys one's capacity of leadership quicker than the habit of shifting responsibilities to others, he says. 27, they recognize the achievements of others. A great leader also understands that an excellent performance should be commended. Since people are often more motivated by verbal recognition of their efforts than they are by solely a cash bonus. 28, they treat others the way they would like to be treated. He tells Carnegie that he places supreme importance on the golden rule, saying that it is a simple insight into the proper way to do business. 29, they're optimistic. Some people wear a pervasive cynicism as a badge of honor, but those who choose to be positive set themselves up for success and have better reputations. 30, they assume responsibility for actions of their entire team. So even though Carnegie makes this point at the end of his spoken list to Hill, he says that if he could go back, he'd list this as the first point due to its importance. And finally, number 31, they are able to act without being guided by emotion. He finds the best leaders have a degree of stoicism about them in the sense that they can separate themselves from their emotions when it comes time to make an important decision and see things objectively. So an interesting list there from Carnegie himself about what goes into what are some of the great qualities of a leader. Again, number 30 he points to as maybe possibly the most important of assuming responsibility for the actions of the entire team. And so a lot of those values that he thinks leaders should possess, we can see within himself, obviously. And let's peel back to understand who Andrew Carnegie was as a leader and which of those qualities he most embodied. So he really did have the capacity to generate enthusiasm for his projects. So he was a motivating, high-energy sort of leader that had passion into his projects. He also was a quick learner with a head for figures and a really great memory, and was obsessed sort of with the lowest possible cost and keeping costs low throughout projects. He was described also as charming and witty with a puckish sense of humor. Unlike contemporary robber barons, so John D. Rockefeller, episode 31, maybe Vanderbilt 32 as well, and J.P. Morgan, who we might cover at some point in another future episode of Leaders, Carnegie wanted to be liked and knew how to make himself likable. However, he had neither compunction nor hesitation about breaking the eggs that went into his omelet. He also had a strong faith and default optimism within his leadership style. He, as the introductory story alluded to, he embraced technology and he really insisted upon using the latest technology to move the industry and his businesses forward. He also is described as having a heavy-handed management style, so always looking for improvement. And he really led with a form of intimidation, sort of like episode 27, Thomas Watson had a very kind of fierce, heavy-handed approach to his leadership style, so some could describe Carnegie in that same way. Others would describe him as a pragmatic leader, so he had articulated the strong mission for his organization with his entire team, with the idea of teaming up for tomorrow, which shows his characteristics as team player and goal-setting leader. He was able to establish America's largest steel plant via motivation and teamwork with his partners within a decade of its establishment. He properly balanced personal life and work. He often used to go to Europe with his family to enjoy personal and family life. Carnegie was concerned with the solution of the problem and motivated his team to make them confident. For example, mentioned also in his autobiography, he relentlessly motivated his brother Tom in his bad timings to pursue his dream. He was a very inspiring motivational speaker for employees, magnetic personality amongst teammates and investors, very focused towards a goal, and was characterized for maintaining discipline for his organization's growth. His very close friend Thomas Miller was in a problematic situation with a local iron firm, but he did not take any action because this would have affected his organization's overall goal. He can be considered a sort of pragmatic leader based on all that. The other thing he did have was a vision. He was a visionary. He had a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve, able to articulate that vision to others, saw the potential of the steel industry, and was determined to build a company that would dominate it. He also had a vision for the role that his company could play in society. He believed that business leaders had a responsibility to use their wealth for the greater good, and he was committed to philanthropy throughout his life. He also had the ability to surround himself with talented people. So he recognized that he could not achieve his vision alone, and he was not afraid to hire people who were smarter than him. He believed in delegating authority and empowering his employees to make decisions. That approach sort of led him to build a strong team able to execute that vision. He had a commitment to selecting and nurturing a skilled team along that way. He believed that the strength of a business was not found in its bricks and mortar, but it's in its people. Anecdotes abound of him empowering subordinates, involving them in decision-making processes, providing opportunities for professional growth. He's also known for his innovation, willingness to take bets and risks. So one of the projects he had was building a bridge the first bridge over the Mississippi River. And that project in itself was taking a huge bet on the idea at that time was not known of using steel to construct that bridge. So he put lots of time, investment, resources into something he really had no certainty as to whether it would work or not, but it was a big risk and a big bet that he took on that working out. He also, on the innovation and willingness to take risks, he wasn't content with the status quo. He was always looking for ways to improve his business. He was an early adopter of those new technologies, the Bessemer process we mentioned before, making steel. He was willing to invest in research and development, willing to take risks, investing in the Homestead Steelworks. He also had the ability to motivate, inspire employees. He believed in treating those employees well, committing to providing them with good working conditions, fair wages. He was a skilled communicator as well, so he was able to articulate his vision clearly, known for his persuasive speaking style. Prolific writer, he also wrote several books, including The Gospel of Wealth, in which he articulated his philosophy of philanthropy. Finally, he was known for his humility and his commitment to ethical principles. Despite the enormous wealth and success, he remained humble, committed to giving back to society. Believed that business leaders had a responsibility to use their wealth for the greater good. He was also a generous philanthropist throughout his life. He was also committed to ethical principles and believed in treating his employees and customers with fairness and respect. Let's move on now. So that was a good summary of his leadership styles there. Let's move on now to some of the challenges that he encountered along the way. So he does blame episode 31's subject again, John D. Rockefeller, with the stalled out sort of railroad industry. And so that forces Carnegie at many times, and many of these leaders that we've looked into, they have had to pivot. They've had to adapt, change their business along the way with the times, the technologies, that sort of thing. So he turns to using steel with buildings, structural steel for skyscrapers he ends up going into after pivoting off of the railroad industry at the time. So that is one sort of challenge that he had to deal with. The other one being the Homestead Strike of 1892. So that was a major labor dispute between Carnegie Steel Company and its workers, which turned pretty violent. Henry Clay Frick, who we will go into more in the mentors section, and he was Carnegie's business partner, handled the situation harshly, hiring Pinkerton agents to break the strike. Resulting battle led to deaths and significant public backlash. This really taught Carnegie the importance of labor relations, potential consequences of harsh labor practices. While he publicly distanced himself from the violent methods used by Frick, the strike kind of tarnished his reputation and highlighted the need for better worker management relations. The South Fork Dam failure, which ended up causing the Johnstown flood, which is fairly well known, but this is an interesting sort of story of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, of which Carnegie was a member, and then Henry Clay Frick ends up kind of owning the South Fork Dam. There were many pleas to strengthen the dam by the town of Johnstown, and those pleas are ignored, namely by Frick. And so what ends up happening is the dam lowers and it weakens, as Frick has specifically requested a better road in order to get into town. And so he makes that adjustment, and the dam gets weakened. And as a result, the flood results in over 2,200 deaths, as the water then flooded into the town. And so that was a big failure in 1889, and Carnegie was not really directly responsible for that maintenance, but the disaster underscored the importance of kind of corporate and social responsibility, reinforcing idea that position of power and wealth needed to consider the broader impact of their sort of impacts on society. Frick-Carnegie relationship. So the challenge there, we'll get into this a little more with the mentors section, but Carnegie's relationship with Henry Clay Frick deteriorated over time, particularly due to differences in business philosophy, personal conflicts. That partnership eventually ended in a legal battle when Carnegie tried to oust Frick from the company. That conflict taught Carnegie about the complexities of business partnerships, importance of aligning those strategies. He had some initial failures in the telegraph business, so early in his career he experienced setbacks while working there, struggling to find his footing, encountering resistance from established competitors. Reputation management to some extent as well, so despite his success, he faced criticism for his aggressive business practices, conditions in the steel mills from the workers. Disparity between his wealth and the lives of his workers often drew public ire. Economic fluctuations, so his businesses were affected by economic downturns, market fluctuations. That, in effect, times threatened his venture's stability and profitability. But like most America's business titans, he paid a high personal price for his complete dedication to his company's success and to his own ambition. The price for him was the sharp split between what he wanted to be, or at least saw himself as, and what tremendous success in business demanded that he be. He sought the affection of his friends, partners, and workers, yet in the end, he alienated some based on the loyalty to his company first, last, and above all. He wasn't alone among the titans in that sort of single-minded dedication and focus to that ambition. Final section here will be mentors and heroes. The first one being Tom Scott of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So Carnegie works for him as his personal assistant when he's younger. He's promoted under him to manager at 24 to oversee the expansion of the railroads west. And from Tom Scott, he learns a lot of different qualities from him. Management and cost control. Tom Scott ends up mentoring him on investing. Amongst that as well is the importance of networking and relationships. So Scott taught him the value of building and maintaining professional relationships, and Scott's extensive connections helped him establish his own network of contacts. Strategic risk-taking as well. Scott demonstrated that importance of taking calculated risks to achieve growth. He often engaged in bold business ventures, expanding the railroad network, investing in new technologies. Efficiency and cost control. Scott emphasized the necessity of efficiency, cost control in operations. Leadership and management skills too. So Scott was a skilled leader, manager, known for his ability to motivate, manage large teams. Innovative thinker as well, so an advocate for that innovation, modernization, using those new technologies that Carnegie ends up adopting as well. Financial acumen, so that investing piece as well as capital management were critical lessons for Carnegie, as well as crisis management. So Scott's handling of crises such as managing the railroad during the Civil War showcased the importance of calm, decisive action in the face of challenges. Henry Clay Frick, maybe the most important partnership, hired and Frick what really had the kind of opposites and that complemented to some extent Carnegie. So he ends up hiring him in some sense for his merciless edge that Carnegie lacked. So Frick was his business partner. He knew business. He had humble beginnings like Carnegie, so he connected with him there. But Frick also did have aggressive business tactics. So he was known for that tough, no-nonsense approach to business, taught him those tactics in achieving business dominance. That included hard bargains, reducing costs ruthlessly, and eliminating competition. Frick also emphasized vertical integration in the steel industry. So under that management, the Carnegie Steel Company acquired not just steel mills, but also raw materials, transportation, production processes needed to control that entire chain. Frick's handling of labor relations was harsh and confrontational, as alluded to in that Homestead strike. It led to short-term cost savings and increased productivity, but it also taught Carnegie about the long-term effects of that sort of approach. Poor labor relations, strikes, bad publicity, government intervention. Frick, like Scott, was a strong advocate for technological innovation and efficiency, pushed the adoption and practices in steel mills, which helped Carnegie Steel become the largest, most efficient steel producer in the world. Frick also had business acumen that extended to financial management. He taught him how to manage finances carefully, ensuring company had capital needed for expansion. Expansion also came in the form of strategic acquisitions, so Frick was instrumental in guiding Carnegie through strategic acquisitions that expanded their business empire. Had really a keen eye for identifying valuable assets and integrating them into the company's operations. So the first story we alluded to, the Thompson Steelworks. So J. Edgar Thompson is the man behind that, and he was the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad and served as mentor to Carnegie. Carnegie started his career in the railroad industry working as a telegraph operator, later became a personal telegrapher assistant to Scott, who was the superintendent of the PA Railroad's Western Division. Scott introduced Carnegie to Thompson, which proved to be a pivotal connection in his career. So under Thompson, the career advancement for Carnegie quickly rose through the ranks of the PA Railroad. Investment opportunities as well. So his relationship with Thompson led to insider knowledge, encouragement of his mentors. Carnegie invested in various ventures related to the railroad industry, including iron and steel companies. Business practices. So Carnegie also adopted many of Thompson's business practices, including cost control, efficiency, innovation. And the legacy. So the personal relationship between Thompson and Carnegie exemplifies the impact of mentorship and networking in the business world. A few others here will be Enoch Pratt. So that was really from the vein of philanthropic influence. So Pratt was a successful businessman, philanthropist, best known for founding the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Maryland in 1882. Vision of providing free access to education, resources for all people, regardless of their social status. That greatly inspired Carnegie. His library served as a model for Carnegie's extensive support of public libraries. Herbert Spencer. So Carnegie claimed to be a champion of evolutionary thought, particularly through the work of Spencer, even declaring Spencer his teacher. So Carnegie had some political, economic focus during the late 19th, early 20th century. Defense of laissez-faire economics. Carnegie emphatically resisted government intrusion in commerce as well as government-sponsored charities. Carnegie believed the concentration of capital was essential for societal progress and should be encouraged. He was an ardent supporter of commercial survival of the fittest. He also argued unions impeded the natural reduction of prices by pushing up costs. And then on the surface, Carnegie appeared to be really that strict laissez-faire capitalist and follower of Spencer. And he really seemed to embody all the qualities of Spencer's sort of survival of the fittest realm there. Abe Lincoln he also references, not as a mentor, but more of a hero. And so the commitment to equality and freedom, he really admired from Lincoln's perspective. So his dedication to ending slavery, promoting equality resonated deeply with him. The leadership and vision that Lincoln exhibited too. So Carnegie admired his leadership qualities, particularly his ability to guide the nation through its most challenging period. His vision for a united and free America and his determination to preserve the Union were traits Carnegie found inspiring. Carnegie thought he was a self-made man himself, so he respected kind of Lincoln's humble beginnings, rise to the presidency, self-made success, log cabin to White House, and then exemplifying sort of the American dream idea that hard work, perseverance, integrity could lead to great achievements. Moral integrity as well, so Lincoln's strong moral compass and commitment to doing what he believed was right. And then advocate for education and knowledge was something he admired as well from Lincoln's standpoint. The last part here is just on philanthropy. So thousands of different libraries he constructs throughout the U.S. that are still standing today. And then church organs was another thing that he did. And so the Gospel of Wealth, published in 1889, referenced before, argues that wealthy individuals have a moral obligation to use their wealth for the greater good of society. So the key points that he points out in his philosophy towards philanthropy is wealth as a trust. So he argues that wealthy individuals are trustees of their wealth, holding it in stewardship for the benefit of society, compares the management of wealth to a sacred trust. He also emphasizes that surplus wealth should be used to improve society in ways that benefit the community at large. That includes supporting education, libraries, scientific research, and other public institutions. He defends the accumulation of wealth through merit and hard work, but stresses that with great wealth comes great responsibility, so a meritocracy there. On philanthropy, he promotes it as a means to address social inequalities and improve the lives of others. Believes in giving back to society during one's lifetime rather than leaving it as inheritance. And then he critiques the practice of leaving vast fortunes to heirs who did not earn them, arguing that it can lead to negative consequences for both the heirs and society. And so that is where we will leave episode 34 on Andrew Carnegie. Certainly a man in America's first sort of modern titan, the pioneer of the steel industry. Strong thoughts on leadership through his own works, as well as through what he had told in the Think Your Way to Wealth Napoleon Hill book that we outlined, 31 of his different kind of interesting qualities and a lot of great quotes on what he views as a leader, and he certainly exhibited it as himself. And so with that, episode 34, Andrew Carnegie, we will be back here soon for episode 35. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.